is what we came here for. Be girls, be boys, report to the floor. Drop down, crop circle, spread it all around the
Sounds on your block, someone money, you're going to talk at the box. We're about to get this party started, secret that you want.
with the time allowed it, the place got crowded. Red dropped the needle, the whole spot shouted.
Division, millennium and militia. Women languages for Los Angeles is the issue.
Yeah, we're gonna get you in a frame of mind, and we're helping you paint the picture with a brush.
Paintbrush, don't be mad because you ain't us. Make the motherfuckers are keeping us in the latest. Back in the day when we went home on the late bus, we knew in our hearts
We were the greatest, made us kick up with the fist up, amped off reaction like it's my fifth cut. This cut will properly hit it. The more we learn, the more we feel.
did it. We're dropping another dozen. We're like you can live with your cousin. Harder than the different tides coming at your oven. Girls that are showing the head because we got them.
We feed them big up, shut rock. We jump, we know at the right path they ask for. This is what we came here for. Be girls, be boys, report to the floor. Drop down, crop circle, spread hip hop around the This is what we came here for. Be girls, be boys, report to the floor. Drop down, crop circle, spread hip hop around the
Start off on a good foot, take a good look. All it took was a good shake. Wallflower needs soul power. Fans know at a show, keep it strong for a whole hour. Someone said it's a gift, man. And that energy we get and pull them out of that quicksand. Feeling that cause we all need healing. Real life healing why it's so appealing. Wearing it wrong, the change is good. Carrying each and every song like some wish they could. This is my baby. Show up the show down, turn the volume up, turn the party out, bring your life
Take a
around.
little bit and make a lot of it. We got it here. Harder than a modern bird. Rocking it, non-stopping it like bound by the up on the block. We're in the club. Asia, Africa, Benny
for coming, everybody. Huge round of applause for Antics Dancers. Hip-hop multi-music theater company that puts together music, hip-hop, dance, art, poetry, drama to uplift the community, and they're here today to kick off our Straight Outta Drew event and welcome our third class of 2020. Where is Amy Catfox Campion, Artistic Director of Antics? Anyways, huge round of applause for her too. Thank you again for joining us today. So I would like to introduce our amazing panel that we have today. They're here to kick off our orientation week and welcome our new class, the class of 2020. Yep. Also, we have some class of 2018 students here. Raise your hand. All right. Hey! And class of 2019, raise your hand. So class of 2019 is starting their clinical year. Class of 2018 is almost ready to leave the nest. They're back on campus to start their third year, and then they're going to be graduating in December. So to introduce our panelists, we have with us today Pastor Fisher, we have Sylvia Drew Ivy, we have Dr. Cynthia Davis, and Dr. Ronald Beavers. They're going to all tell you a little bit about themselves, and they're going to talk to us about the history of the university and the local community, and how we can all strive to become excellent and be able to provide excellent care to our community and become part of our community. And that starts with you guys today. And we also have Dr. Balcazar, the Kosh Dean. Give a big shout. Dr. Michael is provost of the university. You guys will meet everybody during white coat ceremony too. And we have Dr. Shea and Richard, Espy, Julie. Who am I missing? Our faculty, PA faculty, give a big shout. PA crew that helped set all this up, give a big shout. So thank you everyone for being here today, and I'll let the panelists take it away.
Okay. How's everyone doing? Good. I think I've done this. Is this my third year?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, she's like, yeah. So I'm Michael Fisher. I pastor down the street, actually, at Greater Zion Church Family on El Segundo in Wilmington, across the street from Willowbrook. I've been pastoring there now for 13 years. I've been preaching for 20 years. Very active in the community. Our church is actually the first African-American church in Compton. My father built it literally by hand, established in 1954. And I took it over in 2005, and since then, we've been very active in our community, adopted Willowbrook School, worked with Centennial High School, worked diligently in bringing down the gun violence that's in the 1st District over there where our church resides. Let's see, I have a couple of albums out. I'm a pop Christian recording artist. It's my side hustle. And I'm also an author since the last time I've been here, and I have a new book out called The 12 Pillars of the Church. And I just got married since the last time I've been here. And I have a brand new 7-week-old son.
Hey, okay.
That's the last time I've been here. So a brother been busy. As you can tell, I'm a different kind of a pastor. I have a different kind of swag. I'm totally okay with that. And I love being here, and I'm glad to be back here another year to talk about how it is you can help our community, and our community can help you. We all grow together, and we can change some lives. Thank y'all for having me.
Good morning, and welcome. I'm Sylvia Drew Ivy, and I work for the president as his special assistant for community affairs. Why do we have a special assistant for community affairs? Because this university was founded because of our community. If the community had not said enough, in 1965. We're not going to live this way any longer. And we had the Watts Revolt. Charles R. Drew University would not have been founded. The governor set up a commission. The commission looked at all of the problems that were extant in this community, and they said, we have no hospital, we have no place for physicians to get training and to keep their skills up. And that was the beginning of Martin Luther King Hospital and Charles R. Drew University. The community is still very involved with what we're doing 52 years later. We have community faculty. Community faculty inform us of the perspective of community members in terms of what is happening with their health, and they take information out from our researchers and our university back to the community. Very important two-way street. Nobody else has community faculty like CDU. This was an innovation here. Community is also part of the President's Community Advisory Board. Leaders in various venues, including the church, who come on a quarterly basis and inform the President of what is going on from their perspective. So we're not an isolated academic institution. We are a community-partnered institution. The research that our very important research component does is of great interest to the community. Why do they have to wait 17 years to hear about what they found? That's normally how long it takes. If you have community faculty, they can hear about it and take it next week to their meetings, to their churches, to their schools. Is that a good idea? Yesterday we had a presentation by a young researcher, a student here who said, who's been researching breast cancer. African American women die of breast cancer more than any other group. And he said the way to think about it is as cancer as a seed in the breast. And what is the environment the seed is in? Well, if the environment of the breast is composed of the effects of tobacco smoking and obesity, then that seed is going to grow. If you remove that environmental factor from that seed, then that cancer will not grow. And I thought that was such a wonderful message, so I said, let's put that on the CDU YouTube so that that message can go that way to get out to the community. So they're discovering and talking about ways to connect all the time. And we want to get that message to you, and we want to get that message to the communities that we serve. So that's part of the role that I play, and that's why it's so important for us to be here. The school is named for my father. My father was never here. He died in 1950. But the first president of Drew, Dr. Mitchell Spellman, was his student. And the local medical society, the Charles R. Drew Medical Society, is named for him. So there were people in the environment who said, this university is not going to be just an academic institution, this is going to be a research institution. Charles Drew did research on blood and the nature of blood and how you could preserve blood and separate plasma from red blood cells and store it and get it to the troops in World War II. We think that our students are capable of that kind of research, of that kind of contribution. So his name and his work are used as an example of what we expect of you. So I'll stop there, and I'm sure we're going to come back around, but welcome again. We're delighted that you're here. You have no idea how impressive you are collectively. as a group of individuals. You are just amazing, and we couldn't be happier that you've chosen Drew to do your studies.
Well, good morning. My name is Cynthia Davis, and I'm an assistant professor in the College of Medicine and the College of Science and Health. I've been here at Charles Drew University it'll be 36 years this month. I was recruited back in the mid-'80s to develop one of the university's first teen pregnancy prevention programs, and I sort of segued into HIV and AIDS. I think it's important that I give a little bit of background about myself. I was born and raised in Redlands, California, which is a small community about 70 miles southeast of here in San Bernardino County. I attended UC Santa Barbara in the late 60s, 1967 through 72, and I received my bachelor's in sociology. I moved back home. I got a full-time job at Loma Linda University Medical Center, and then I went to school part-time at Cal State San Bernardino doing pre-med, and I ended up getting my BS in biology in 1979, and then was recruited to the School of Public Health at UCLA, where I got my master's in public health in 1981. From the time that I was in Santa Barbara, it was at the height of the Black Power movement, where we established one of the first BSUs in the country, as well as established one of the first Black Studies department in the country in 1968. It was always impressed upon us the importance of community, and that we as students, as health professionals, did not exist without the community. And that was one reason why I wanted to come and work in South LA, was because of the mission of the university and the fact that the university was in the heart of the Black community of Los Angeles. And from 1985 to 1992, I was fortunate enough to direct a national program funded by the CDC, highlighting the impact that HIV and AIDS was having in the African American community nationally. It was implemented under the auspices of the National Organization of Black County Officials. So I got to travel the country all those years providing technical assistance and training to Black elected officials, school board members, and local community leaders about HIV and AIDS, because back when HIV first came on the scene, there was this misnomer that it was a white gay male disease, so people didn't think it could happen to them. So I got a really good worldview, both looking at communities being impacted by HIV and AIDS in an urban setting and a rural setting, what was happening around the country. And again, there was not enough resources, lack of information, a lot of stigma, and a lot of homophobia. Then in 1988, we were like in crisis mode here in LA County. Because of the stigma associated with the disease, many people were dying on gurneys at County General Hospital because people were afraid to attend to them because there was not enough information on how the disease was transmitted. So a group of gay activists got together and formed a nonprofit called the AIDS Hospice Foundation to build hospices where their friends and loved ones could have a place to die with dignity. And one of the founding members of the AIDS Hospice Foundation, Phil Wilson, who was a Black gay man living with HIV and AIDS, recruited me to that board to help build a hospice in South LA because there was quote unquote community opposition to a gay organization coming into South LA to build a hospice. So I joined their board in December of 1988, and within a 2-year period, with a great deal of community engagement and community mobilization, we formed a local community advisory board. We ended up building the Carl Bean Hospice over off of Western and Adams. We opened in 1991, a $5 million, 25-bed, state-of-the-art hospice for our community. After the ribbon cutting, I could have easily stepped away from the board, but I was so impressed with the mission of the organization. I stayed on their board, and now the organization is the largest nonprofit AIDS organization in the world. We're in 41 countries and 15 states, and we're still growing. The only other achievement that I would like to share with you is that in the early 90s, again, there was still a lot of fear by people taking an HIV test because there was not a very effective treatment. So people's attitude was, well, why know my status when I know I'm going to die anyway? There's no effective treatment. So the county health department gathered a group of providers together to ask us to come up with some ideas on how we could do more effective outreach to reach the highest risk populations in LA County to get them to take an HIV test. So Drew University spearheaded that initiative, and with 2 other organizations, we got funding from the county to develop the first HIV-dedicated mobile testing program in LA County. And with funding from the Magic Johnson Foundation, because he also came out in '91 and disclosed his status in a pharmaceutical company, we purchased our first mobile van. And the program was so successful, LA County replicated the program, and now it's part of best practices, not only in LA County, but around the world. So those are just some of the things that I've been involved in 36 years. Being here at the university, it's really been a privilege to be able to give back my expertise and to interact with the community. So we welcome you, the class of 2020, and encourage you to get involved in the community, to know your community, so that once you've finished, you'll be providing competent, culturally competent care to medically underserved populations, whether or not you stay in South LA or go to another community around the country. Thank you.
I wish to welcome the 2020 third generation. Third generation. I've been here from the beginning. My name is Dr. Beavers. Most folk call me Brother Ron. That's what I've been known as. I was born and raised here in Los Angeles at the USC Medical Center. Then it was known as the County General. I was raised up in Liso Village, from there 47th to Long Beach, from 47th to Long Beach to 53rd to McKinley, 79th in Maine. I went to 75th Street School, Victory Baptist Church, where they had the first, Reverend Peters, where there was the first broadcast of black church that I know about, and this was in the 40s. I remember sitting on the front porch of the pulpit, then sitting on the front porch when they moved the child care center right next door, right there on McKinley, right by Culver. I'm one of the ones coming up that experienced a great deal of the biasness. Well, in the South, we knew that it was more or less overt. Well, in Los Angeles, it was covert. There was invisible lines. Alameda was one, where you couldn't cross Alameda at a certain time of night. And back then, the East Side was anything that was east of Main Street. Anything west of Main Street was the West Side. And I remember taking my bicycle down the 110, which was fruit trees then. And this was in 1955. I was 9 years old. I remember riding and getting berries, and I remember when they opened the freeway in 1956. I remember coming up off of 74th and Central when they did not allow, and one of my friends who did the documentary, The Fire This Time, Ernest Williams, his name is Bird, we even meet now. was not allowed, his mother was not allowed to establish a Boy Scouts at the old Goodyear, where you know it now, in Florence and Central as the post office, but it used to be the Goodyear Rubber Company. We were right there where if you were on the south side, I mean, on the west side of Central Avenue, you were in the city. If you were on the east side of Central Avenue, you were in the county. And some of my dear friends, one was one of the founding mothers of Charleston, who was Neil Carter, was Bunchy Carter, very dear friend. We went to high school together. We were in gangs together. And these gangs were kind of out of a mode to protect us from the opposite force. But the strange thing about this phenomenon is that none of us were illiterate nonentities. Most folks stayed on the honor roll in school. Most folks didn't have an opportunity. Either our opportunity was you go to prison, and during that time, after the Vietnam War started, you either went to prison or Vietnam. Well, I went to prison. Behind some simple stuff. You guys see the green cross on buildings now. Well, that's what I went to prison for, was marijuana. See how things change in just a half a century. And the only reason it changed is because they figured out, the bureaucracy figured out how to make money off you. See, we've had the prison industrialized system, so they made money off of us. Because the only ones that made money off you if you were busted with an ounce of marijuana then were the feds, and they charged you $100. The kilo was $2,400. Well, these were the things and the constraints that we had, but I know that there was something greater than what we were doing. As far as academics were concerned, I stayed on the honor roll. Mechanical drafting, technical illustrating. I have an undergrad in computer science. Then I bounced from there and went into economics. Yeah, right over there, see. Didn't like that, and went into more social services. But the phenomena about that, that was my undergrad way back in 1965 when I went into trade tech. My minor was psychology. And that's where I ended up, psychology, counseling psychology. Now, meanwhile, in all of this, there was a trying period. And the trying period was seeing the social and economic changes that were going on, especially after Watts Riot, because I was 18 going on 19 when it happened. Where we're sitting right now used to be the old Palm Lane, which was middle class, black homes, folk-owned businesses that owned the property and lived very plush. 95% of the businesses that were established in Watts were black-owned. But this phenomenon started of gentrification because the powers that be found out what we would do is disenfranchise. So the big corporations, right where you see the 105, that's where the bigger corporations and the stores, where they never built. So what they did was build a freeway so that they can go over the Nickerson Gardens and the Lincoln. It was very strategically planned, and it's right in the epicenter, 10 miles from downtown, 10 miles from Redondo Beach, 10 miles from Long Beach, and 10 miles from Orange County. So the property became all of a sudden very valuable, but if you know anything about how bureaucracy works and policy works, they do strategic planning that are increments of 10, 15, 20 years, even a half a century plan. But at half a century, oh, and by the way, the first black or African American, if I want to be politically correct, that died in Vietnam that received the Medal of Honor was James Anderson. But James Anderson was from Watts. He went to Jordan High School. But who else is James Anderson? Well, James Anderson was the nephew of David Satcher. They have a little memorial about him in Lincoln Cemetery. But before I die, I'm going to see that part of this freeway is named James Anderson instead of Glenn Anderson, because that's what Watts produced. No one knows this. And you see, my thing is to preserve history because I'm part of history. I didn't get this out of textbooks. I helped write the textbooks. I even wrote a model, and the model was a behavior, it was a trauma model, PTSD and substance abuse and recovery, because it proves that the phenomena of self-medication took place during this time. And they put a mechanism in place where they were using this as folk going to prison. DCFS, by the way, it was known as AFDC at the time. It started in 1964. I'm sorry, some folk might get mad at me about affirmative action and what happened, but that was really a shot in the ass. Because while people were talking about equal rights and leveling the playing field, they were talking about where we're going to be in 50 years. So here we are, 54 years down the line. Ask yourself, are we any better? I don't think so. Because we're facing the same problems. We're facing with just another social economic twist to it. We got the haves and we got the have-nots. Well, I chose to dedicate myself of building a social economic base here, right where I was raised up at, and it's working, and it's a fight. Natural phenomena took place because my law agency, Positive Imagery, and my veterans program, I was in Dallas, Texas with Judge Burnett, and it decided to burn up. So when I came back, I had to do fire duty. We just now moving our files and everything back into the building. But on top of that, where I'm the clinical director, the powers to be again was trying to make an end run on a women's program. They don't care about your gender. This is business to them. And I had to take a little trip to the Board of Supervisors with some petitions. And thank goodness that right is still right, and that the Board of Supervisors is, and I'm gonna have to give Mark his kudos, because he stepped in. And he made some phone calls, because I do know working in the bureaucracy, they don't hear from the bottom up. They only hear from the top down who gives them the money. Well, it's kind of a heartwarming feeling when you can talk to the people directly within the community to assess their needs, but you can also talk and know the language to talk to the folk that are the powers to be too. In other words, you have to have a diverse portfolio. This day of specialized care where you only speak one language is dead. You have to speak the language of the people. Because if you don't speak the language of the people, you'll never be able to convey the hurt of the people. What's your worth? If they come at you with $1 million, you just sold yourself. But as we know, each year, the cost of living goes up, so that $1 million today is not $1 million tomorrow. So what's your worth? Only thing I'm saying here, all in all, is you have to find your purpose. This university was founded on a purpose, on a spirit. Miss Mobley, that's where I get mine from mostly. Miss Mobley, Miss Carter, Mary Henry. Only one left out of that group is Miss Carter. Didn't she just crack him out of it? Yes. Yeah, you know I'm trying to get 72, shit. And it's hard. You know, I've been out here fighting so long, I don't even know what a break is. But I do know what fight I'm in because I have to keep my focus. I do believe now is an opportune time, since the baby boomers are getting older, since healthcare is going to be your second largest in the nation or the world, that this will afford an opportune time, not only in biotech and research, Drew is a major part of, because folk don't realize cancer, we had the highest mortality and morbidity rate for African Americans here in Spot 6. It's been like that ever since I've known, ever since I've worked with Sylvia. It's been like that. Prostate cancer, breast cancer. One Oscar Streeter, a researcher, my bud, he proven that phenomenon. And he was the chief radiation oncologist there at USC Norris. Then he went on to chair at Howard. He's in Santa Monica now. But that's where the road has taken me. In doing all of this, and all my academic achievements, everything that I've learned, I'm able to execute at the organization where I'm at, and I still have the spirit of community where I'm able to advocate for those that may not know or have the spirit. They have the willingness, but they just don't know. Well, I don't mind picking up a poster. I don't mind signing a petition, because the voice of the people is still strong. You vote. So I think a lot of people, and there's one thing I can say about Miss Mobley that carried on to Supervisor Thomas, and I'm gonna quote him: never give up your power. We give up our power. I don't give up shit. I'm sorry. Because that's who I am. I'm not gonna give up my power, because that's all I got. And with my power comes integrity. With my power comes dignity. With my power comes honor. And that's priceless. Because there comes a point in time in your life that whatever deal that you might have that might determine the fate of your life or the outcome of your life, it's not about how much money you are going to make or how much money you have. Is how valuable your word is. Can you be trusted? I don't know. I was just born on the east side, so I don't know. Only thing I know is I made a phone call 2 weeks ago, and the same brothers that I was in the gangs with that are now lawyers and what have you, they met up with me. And we put petitions together to save a program. Now, what kind of loyalty is that? Not how much money you got or what you can do for me. It was about, hey man, we need to talk. Now that is the spirit that I bring here. Because that same spirit, when things were needed here, I made a call to DC. Yeah, this little black boy could do that. And it was responded. It went all the way down to Atlanta, Georgia, to Jimmy Carter. It went from there to keeping the doors open here. Yeah, I can do that. Because it's not me doing it. It's the spirit that's behind it. A Miss Mobley, a Mary Henry, those that were in the trenches. I'm still in the trenches. But I'm going to stop right there and welcome 2020. I love 2018. 2018, boy, we go round and round. Some of them just can't stand me. You know, but when they leave, they know what I'm talking about. because I'm going to be real with them, and I'm fully supportive, and we'll back you to the hill. And that's one thing you never have to worry about. So again, welcome, and thank you.
We can open the floor up for some questions. Anybody have any questions? Don't be shy. I know somebody has some questions. Rita, I see your hand go up.
Yeah, it went up.
I saw it so. Dr. B saw it go up too.
So I don't even know who to direct this question at, but anyone of you guys can answer. So I'm a third year, and I just got out of clinicals. I guess one of the biggest obstacles for me as a developing clinician was getting so emotionally involved with the patient because I genuinely care about what they're going home to and whatnot. In your guys' line of work, which is all different, what's a tip to be able to maintain that compassion, not giving away power, right, but being able to just be there for a human being, in a sense? I feel like as a clinician, it's difficult to work in an environment where that is continuously being stripped away, and the fact that you are serving another human being. So what is something practical, just as an advice?
I could jump in on that. Because I'm a pastor.
Yes.
And I passed about 4,000 members. And over the years, one of the things that sometimes people have criticized me for, other pastors, has been the statement of, you take it too personal. You know, all you can do is just, what is the saying? You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. But if you ever seen a Never-Ending Story, and it's an old movie, and there's a time when the horse is dying, and you're crying because you start identifying with the horse, and the horse took you through so many adventures. So I don't believe in that whole, you can bring the horse to the water, but you can't make it drink, and you're just supposed to be like, oh, well, you're on your own. I believe that God requires that we do what we do from our heart, not from our minds. That in this community, they need that. They need to know that their clinician or their doctors or their practitioners or their pastors or their lawyers, that they actually care and that they're not just there to get a paycheck. So it's hard for people to change. That's one of the hardest things for people to do. But it is very possible for you to love people into a new condition. And that's just being persistent. I think what's missing, by me being I like to call myself a Generation X-millennial. You know, because I'm like on the bottom end of Generation X and then on the very, very top end of the whole millennial thing, is when I was coming up, you had teachers and you had doctors who cared enough where they got all up in your business. You know, they called your mama. They called, you know, if you missed school, they was like, yeah, Michael wasn't at school today. You know, you had doctors who cared. They cared about what you were eating. They cared about where you were living. They would talk to the mother and say, hey, you got to stop smoking around this child. That child has asthma. These are going to be the repercussions of this, that, and the other. I feel like in our society now, it's all robotics, and the people are now becoming robotic. We have enough robots controlling our world and our society. Please don't become one. Keep that heart. Sometimes it is it's a burden and a blessing, because that same compassion you have will save someone. That same compassion you have sometimes will hurt you when that person is not willing to be saved. But don't allow it to change your emotional attachment, because that's what's going to make you a great clinician and healer. So you can't save everybody, And sometimes it's hard. I've buried, I'll close by saying this, I'm in the trenches, all up and down Compton, Wilmington, in Compton, they know who I am, you know. And there's a lot of young people I can save and I can snatch, and then there's a lot of young people who I have to bury because they did not listen to me. And I've had to bury a lot of good people that didn't take my advice. And I say to myself, oh, you know, maybe I shouldn't be so attached, you know, because I'm going home depressed, you know, and I got to work through that. But that's what God has given me that makes me, that's my X-Man power, you know, the heart that I have to care. So keep that. Don't lose it. You're not going to be able to save everybody, but just know that with that heart, you will save somebody.
Thank you.
Let me answer that question also. I used to run THE Clinic, which is a federally qualified clinic in South LA, and you cannot get involved with every patient because your energy won't allow you to be involved with every patient. But if you will connect with the patient in a way that is personal to that patient, I'll give you an example. We had a physician, we had HIV patients. Cynthia had helped us begin a program for women with HIV in the early 90s. And the patients weren't taking their meds, which is often a problem with our patients. The physician sat down with a group of patients and she asked each patient about 3 questions. What time do you get up? How many children do you have and do you pick them up? What time do you serve dinner? They were astonished that a physician would want to know those personal things about them, because you don't talk to physicians or PAs or nurses about your personal environment, right? But with those 3 answers, she was able to say, knowing what meds they were on, all right, keep the one at 8 o'clock, don't take the one at 2, do this at 5. So she reshaped the timing of their meds according to what they had just told her about the other pressures in her life. So that made a huge, huge difference to them. It didn't take much time, but she went around, she talked to each and every person, and she got that. And they left feeling that they were more empowered because somebody had seen them. Somebody had recognized they had these pressures in their lives. Another thing you can ask a patient is, are you homeless? A lot of times, people didn't ask that question. If you find that out, then you can refer them to services for that housing problem. They're there for a medical problem, but housing is a health indicator. You can't be healthy very much if you're not housed. So I think you have to be smart about what you ask, but if you let them know you're interested in something other than that thing that they came for that day, that connects. They know you're a human being because you asked about that thing, and they'll come back to see you.
Countertransference. That's what I just heard. One of the biggest challenges in the medical industry, or the medical field, along with behavior science, psychology, mental health, is countertransference. That's why any clinician, social worker, psychologist, they have to give up 3,200 hours of supervision. What do the 3,200 hours do? It gets the person to know who they are. You don't want your issues to become the client's issues or the patient's issues. But with Western medicine, Freudian, there's a separation, that apathy, where you're not connecting to the client. The way that I've learned, and part of some of Amos Wilson, John Henry Carr, Wade Nobles, is if you don't connect with the person's spirit, you've lost the person right from the beginning. It's not about what you feel or how they feel. It's about you being the clinician, and no matter where that client's at or that patient's at, it's going to get them to bring them up. So therefore, you got to know you. The connection has to be there. You have to be compassionate. Empathy, because I deal with women, and I hear this one all the time. Dr. Beavers, you know there's a bunch of women in here, and you know how we are. I says, 7 out of 10 of you are suicidal too, and the other 7 out of 10 are homicidal. So what outweighs what? Because you're a woman, that you have set this probability factor of killing yourself or killing someone else. I'm looking at trying to save your life. And I understand what you're saying, but understand this. Attack. Most of my girls have been raped, molestation, PTSD up the yang, don't trust nobody, not even themselves. So you gotta know you. Because it's one thing I tell them, I don't want anything from you but to get better. I don't want your money. I don't want your coochie. Straight talk. I want you to get better. Then all of a sudden, once the spirit is connected and that much trust comes in, then I can be the clinician. But I had to start someplace. Everything you heard is right, but know who you are. So your issues don't interfere with the patient's issues. That's the main challenge here.
Thank you.
I just want to share a brief story that's in relationship to what everybody was saying. I've counseled thousands of people on the mobile van, coming in for an HIV test. Have learned to be totally transparent with people and truthful with people.
Disclosure.
And there was one instance where a staff person from THE named Nola Thomas, who had oversight for the HIV treatment clinic targeting the women with support groups and interacting with the women. She had moved to Idaho. And so it was maybe 5 minutes to 5, a weekday. I was getting ready to leave work here at 2 to go pick up my daughter at the private school she's attending in LA before I had a 60-mile drive home. I get this call from Nola saying one of her clients is in crisis and could I go help the client. She gave me the client's name and a phone number. I called up the client, told her I was on my way over there. I stopped and picked up my daughter, went into Hollywood, found her apartment. She was living in an apartment where the lights were out. She was in a crisis situation medically. I got her into my car. I took her over to Hollywood Press, made sure she got admitted to the hospital, and I didn't get home until 1 o'clock in the morning. So again, when you make this commitment to the community and to medically underserved, at-need populations, it's not an 8 to 5 job. You've got to be able to respond regarding any kind of crises that they might be in, and then just deal with it. And so that's what I had to do. So that's just one example in 36 years. I could talk about innumerable examples where, again, you get to a point where in giving back to the community, you just do what has to be done at that particular time. So when those people come on my mobile van, I see them as, this is a teachable moment. I might have them for 30 minutes to 45 minutes, but I'm gonna do everything in my power to educate them so that they can be informed to protect themselves from HIV. And that's what I do, and so I've developed those skills over 36 years. So I don't see it as a burden on my part. I'm doing my job in a culturally competent way where people trust me. They know my word is my bond, and it's because of that that I am so highly respected in the community, because I've been at one institution for 36 years. I didn't job hop, go where the next highest paying job was. I stayed here and made a commitment to service to this community by any means necessary. And that's another reason why I stay here, because I want to mentor future health professionals, the students, to let them learn from my experience, and hopefully that they will, some of my spirit will rub off on them, and they will have that same type of highly motivated to give back and to serve. So
I want to say something else that, and I'm in no way, form, or fashion trying to push anything on anyone, but you know what I discovered? What made Jesus so cool was that he was healing people, and he was doing it in areas where the upper echelon thought that they were forgettable. You know, he was around what they said were to be the thieves, and they were wretched and ratchet and toe up and jacked up. And here he came talking about, hey, I'm attached to this kingdom and I can heal you. You know, and they was like, me? Do you know what I've done? And he was like, yes, you. Go, be healed, right? And so I feel like every single person that's in here needs to see, and I say this every year eventually while I'm on the panel, you need to understand that you're chosen to come to this community. Don't take that lightly.
That's right.
This is not a bridge or a stepping stone for you to say, oh, and I served in Watson Compton. Now I'm getting ready to go blow up and be able to walk around Beverly Hills with all the cool doctors. That's not what this is, right? The hood is not where you come and do some time and then you upgrade afterwards.
Yeah, we have
right?
trust issues anyway.
Yeah, exactly. So we already coming to you.
Everybody in.
Yeah, we already coming to you, and I'm gonna be very honest, especially in this new great America, whatever. There's some serious issues if you ain't looking like us, right? So because we coming already thinking, you coming here thinking you doing us a favor. You got your cape on, you about to rescue us for maybe a year or two, right? And then you're going to go somewhere else in Torrance, you know, or you're going to go to the Valley. This is one of the greatest communities you will ever service.
In the world.
You're going to come across people who have a level of endurance
That's right.
that you will never find anywhere else, hands down. So see it as you were chosen for this. I was going home one day, and you have to respond to the calling. That's why I'm saying that. Because you can't just come and do your hours, log in your hours, clock out, and then go on back where it is that you live. Right? You have to be invested. And the community will test you and will require to see that you will show them your heart that goes beyond your pay and goes beyond your 9 to 5. And I'll say this, I was going home one day on Greenleaf and Wilmington, and as I pull up, the cars were stopped. We dip around, I know where I am. We went around the cars. And so we dipped around the cars, and there was a car shot up. And there was, the driver had been shot in the head. He was dead on sight. There was another young man who was frantic, and then his friend was around the car, and he was on the ground. He had been shot several times in the back. He was bleeding out. I jumped out of the car. I don't know why I thought I was Batman or something. You know, I jumped out of the car, right? 'Cause this is my community. These are my loved ones. I jumped out of the car. My job was to pray for this young man that was on the ground. Another guy who was a doctor, a physician, jumps out of his car. He's trying to do what he needs to do to try to, you know, keep him stable until the ambulance come. And I saw that he was leaving. My job at that moment was to pray for him. And I led him in prayer and bring his soul to comfort as he was taking his last breath. That's when the community tests you to see. I stayed there from, I think it was 9 o'clock at night all the way until 4, 5 o'clock in the morning with the other young man who was frantic, trying to keep him calm so he wouldn't be irate and the police would lock him up. And I was able to do that. Now, I could have just passed by and just called 911 and been like, there's a situation here. But I knew I was chosen to serve this community. So there'll be moments where your calling is going to be tested. Because sometimes God wants to see, are you here to use the people, or are you here to serve the people? So I just wanted to stop and just tell everybody, like, wake it up. You know, you're chosen. And all the people that are your professors, and everyone that's going to teach you, they're your trainers to get you poised and positioned to be able to handle this community with care and love. And don't be so quick to leave it. Everything that glitters is not gold. And if everybody feels that the next assignment is an upgrade, you leave the community high and dry.
That's right.
So you're chosen. And some of you all are, this is it. And don't see it as, this is it. No, this is it. Everybody can't handle this. Some people need mamsy-pamsy cute offices with aroma. Because that's all they can handle. And I ain't scared. Nobody scares me in here. Right? It needs to be said. Some of you all are chosen to be in the trenches. Okay? And so I felt compelled to say that to somebody because I feel like that's going to wake somebody up. And we're going to get another, like, person that's going to be invested in the community that's going to stay and help people like me.
That's right.
I want to add another thought to that. And that is, I assume you all have hearts or you wouldn't have come here. And you want to help people. But what you learn from your patients, I expect you to use to make change. I expect you to use what you learn from them to make change. The scalpel in addressing our problems is policy. Policy is not heroic. Policy is boring. Legislators who you don't want to deal with, who don't understand what we're doing here. But policy is what will free people from the oppression that they're living with. You are the intermediary. You will absorb it. You will learn what the problems are. You translate that to the people who make policy at the local level, the state level, and at the national level. So it's not just sharing your heart, which I know you have. It's learning, remembering, putting it together, working with your colleagues. What kind of policy would help with that problem that you've all experienced? That's where you can carry forward the vision of this school, to be change agents, to be leaders, not just people who help with the health care that's needed.
Oh, I gotta say, you knew the job was dangerous when you took it. Every time I complain, my son tells me that, and it reminds me why I'm doing what I'm doing, because it's much greater than me. And that, who said that was Super Chicken. The millenniums don't know that. This goes back to the 60s. You don't know about that one. Super Chicken, he drank his super sauce. He said, Fred, give me my super sauce. And he's cluck a few times and turn into Super Chicken. He said he knew the job was dangerous when he took it.
We gonna Google it though.
Google it. Google super chicken. And you know, everything is said that it all correlates in the policies. We have to have folk that have our best interests at heart, because we know most of the policies, they look like they favor us, but they don't. They're amended so many kind of ways. But I'm just the kind of believer, I'm in the trenches. And I think any change that's going to be made is going to be made through the masses, through the people. When my brother was talking, my best partner died in my arms and took his last breath. These are the traumas of our community. These are the things that we're dealing with when we see folk, we don't know why they're acting out or why they're getting loaded, why they're doing this. How come someone that can't talk to them? And it's because we just don't know how traumatized and how long the environment alone that perpetuated from slavery all the way to now, you just didn't got to get rid of it. It's in our genetics too. UCLA is doing a study called the allosteric load. The study is covered up through depression. Now, wait a minute. I don't know anyone in SPY 6, especially on the south end of town, that damn it to hell ain't got no doggone depression. So what are you really looking for? And it's a clever way that certain universities are using a depression scale to come in to study the serotonin level and the markers on this. And these DNA markers, what it does is it shows if folk are interested to see how come black men, most especially black men that have endured for the 400 or 500 years of this brutal treatment, have endured this long. That's one of the phenomena of South Los Angeles, because we've endured because we've learned how to work together. It's when we have become disenfranchised where you see we got totally out of balance. Because there's something greater, and I choose to say that's a spirit that's involved. Because we're not just floating through the universe. We're not just here, just going every which way. There is a purpose for everybody being here. And in doing that, we're just a microcosm of that. But when you find your purpose, then in your heart, you know why you're doing what you're doing. And that's when you go over and beyond of what you're doing. I can't tell you the gunshots. I witnessed the same thing right around the corner from my program. Was hit twice in the eye, a young lady. Killed well, she wasn't killed instantly, but when they got her to St. Francis. Here's the hard part. This is what hurt me. It was not just the assassination. It's when they took her panties off, they discovered an 8-track of cocaine. She just stole somebody's drugs, so they killed her. A life gone, snuffed. So the problem is so complex that whatever level we approach it on, just be sincere about that level you're on. That's what I'm talking. I can't do everything. I'm not trying to do everything. And the more I try to push off my plate, the more they try to push on. But I know what I do know, and that's the tenacity and the resilience of coming out this community, and I'm not going to change that. I'm not going to change the color of my heart and the color of my blood. Not my integrity at all. I'm not trying to be the smartest person or the most holier than thou. That's not why I'm here. I'm here in which I do have the blessing. If I can just touch one, I retired from the VA where I saw mass murders. If I just touch one, I've done what I'm supposed to do. but I've touched many, so I know I'm okay with it. That's what it's about. That's why my heart goes with the young folk. Yeah, I'm a little hard. Yeah, I'm there. But hell, when you meet somebody that might have just witnessed 4 or 5 murders, been out there hustling, selling their bodies and what have you, that ain't nice. And I ain't Jesus. I can't lay hands on folk. But I understand that pain. And I know what it takes to come out of it. And that's the kind of tenacity and kind of heart we have to have. I work with the judges all the time in policy. I got it. But my heart, and one of my favorite people was General Hawkins before he died. He was trenches all the way. I don't care what rank he went into the Pentagon, but this brother, he loved being in the trenches with his students, and he taught public policy at Morehouse, at Howard, before he died last year. He knew what he was supposed to do. And that's the kind of spirit and kind of heart that we must pass on so that we can continue doing what we need to do. You know, Miss Mobley still lives real tough inside of me. I can hear her now sometimes with the board up here. They didn't like her at the end. Because why? Miss Mobley was about the community. She was about progress. But Miss Mobley was about whatever you do, don't forget the people who you serve. And that's exactly what we have to do. I believe in progress. But see, I remember to this day whose shoulders I'm standing on. And that is what I'm saying here. I don't care where you go. Just remember where you got it from. Don't get to a point where you think you all that in a bag of chips and some hot damn sauce and everything else, and you got it damn going on, because you don't have anything going on. It's the spirit that's behind you that's motivating you to do what you got to do. That's where I'm at with it.
There were 3 questions we were asked to discuss. The first one was the historical components of the university and surrounding community, and we touched upon that a little bit. The second question was the social and economic challenges in providing health care in the community. And the third was, what are some of the key indicators of health in SPA 6? So I don't know how much time we have left, but in terms of the first question, key for those of you, the new class coming in, is to try to learn as much about the history of this community as possible. Dr. Beavers mentioned this DVD called The Fire. Is it The Fire?
Yeah, The Fire This Time.
The Fire This Time. And I have a copy of that DVD if you guys want to get together as a group and look at it. And in that DVD, Mrs. Lillian Mobley, who was called the Mother of Watts, who was my mentor when I came here, she took me under her wings, is highlighted in that video, talking about the conditions of the community that led to the Watts Rebellion. Mrs. Nola Carter is also interviewed in the video. Dr. Ernie Smith and Dr. Smith, MD, are interviewed in the DVD. So I think that would be a good beginning for those of you, because I've taught here in the MPH program since 2008. And there were some years in teaching a class on health disparities where I had students in the class who didn't know anything about the history. And in one lecture, we even had a student, when we were talking about racism, didn't know what institutionalized racism was. So that there's no excuse, now that you're here, you've made this commitment, that you don't know about the community, and the fact that at the turn of the century, with the large migration that was going on with black people escaping segregation and discrimination in the KKK in the South, They went all over the country, and a significant number of people did come to Southern California and Northern California from the turn of the century through the 40s. And with World War II, there were a lot of jobs here, so that drew a lot of people here in the 40s. I believe the housing developments were built also in the 40s, but also there were covenants in LA County where, unbeknownst to black people, they would not rent or sell homes to black people, and so they ended up being segregated in certain parts of South LA, particularly in the Watts Willowbrook area of Los Angeles, and it was called, I believe, Mud Town. And so this is how you got this large gathering of black people living in South LA or Spot 6 from the 40s up until the 80s, living in really dire circumstances that led again to the rebellion. And I'm assuming most of you have seen video footage of the rebellion and what caused it. And as Sylvia mentioned, as a result of the McCone Commission being established by the governor and these recommendations coming out, Martin Luther King Hospital was built because for most families living in South LA, it was maybe an hour drive to get to County USC, and a lot of people didn't make it. You know, if they didn't have transportation or couldn't catch the bus, they didn't make it. So that was one of the key things in terms of why Martin Luther King Hospital was built, because of lack of adequate health services for the population out here. So the hospital opened in 1972, but prior to that, through the Drew Medical Society, Charles Drew Postgraduate Medical School was established in 1966, a year after the rebellion, where black physicians came together and said that there's a need to have a postgraduate medical school for postgraduate training. So at that time, with the partnership between CDU and the LA County Health Department, Drew became the research and teaching arm of the hospital. So you need to know those things when you're going out into this community to serve this community. It's very, very key. It's very, very important.
Kat, do we have just a moment more? I want to just tell them what the W. Montague Cobb building, which is the main building on campus. I want to just tell you a little about Dr. Cobb, because you need to know that we used to have a statute, a federal statute. Remember my focus on policy. We needed more hospitals. They passed under Harry Truman legislation to build more hospitals. They increased the number by 40%. This is in the 40s. The statute said it was all right to have separate but equal facilities for blacks and whites. That passage was included so they could pass the bill. They passed the bill. They built the hospitals. But the segregated hospitals, which also took place in Los Angeles, this wasn't just in the South, was never equal. It was always very, very unequal and deplorable. Dr. Cobb was the champion of dismantling that. He was the leader of civil rights in healthcare in the same way that Martin Luther King was the leader in civil rights in public accommodations and school desegregation. We all know about Martin Luther King, but we don't know the name of W. Montague Cobb. He was the editor of the Journal of the National Medical Association, which was the Black Medical Association, because blacks were not admitted to the American Medical Association. When Martin Luther King had the March on Washington in 1963, Dr. Cobb was in charge of bringing the doctors in, who were white and black and brown, who decried the state of health care access in the nation. He fought against this separate but equal clause in the legislation. And his efforts were so important that when Lyndon Johnson got Medicare passed, he only invited one person from a medical association to fly with him to Missouri, where they signed the bill because of Harry Truman. And it was Dr. Cobb, because of his civil rights advocacy. No one from the AMA was invited. The AMA had fought against enacting Medicare tooth and nail, and they said it was because they were afraid of socialism. They weren't afraid of socialism, they were afraid of integration. So know that background. This is something that we had to fight. This is the main medical organization that wouldn't let people in at the local level. They couldn't belong to the National American Medical Association. So the very existence of this school to train minority providers, not just minorities, but all people who want to serve in underserved communities, is really an artifact of that period, of those struggles. So you're building on that. You're building on that history. It's a continuity, and we keep his memory alive through the W. Montague Cobb Building.
I want to say also real quick that he said earlier that they built things back in 1950s and 40s with the mindset of what is it going to look like 50 years from now? I think what's making me nervous about our generation is because we're so in the now that we're not concentrating on what is it going to look like 20 years from now.
Right.
So the new monster that you're going to have to fight, and I don't even know if you probably even thought about it, is this battle with knowledge and the need to know. So we're in a generation that doesn't feel like they need to know anything, right? And we have all these tools, phones, Google, iPhone, everything, and we're kind of like almost the dumbest generation, willfully, because they just feel like, well, it's no big deal now. When you approach this community, just know that the young people that you're seeing coming out of McDonald's right across the street and eating all the fast food and all the chemicals that's in the air, they need you to inform them, like she said earlier, on what's going on. Policies that maybe social activists need to start paying attention to. Churches that you need to collaborate with, that maybe you can draw the parishioners' focus to certain health issues and needs that they're probably not even thinking of, because we just live in a generation that is just about now. I would love to see that come out of class of 2020. Woo! Class of 2020. Because by the time 2020 comes, based off of everything that we see going on, not only just in our community, but our world, how you educate them now will determine the kind of community we will have later. So dive right in and start teaming up with community-based organizations and tapping into those people, educating these kids about obesity, diabetes, how a lot of these things can be prevented if we will be proactive, but they just don't even feel like they want to know about that. And so feel free to come to my church and tell the kids. I mean, we have about 200 kids. There would be about 500 kids there Sunday because we're passing out backpacks. But a lot of them are obese. They're like candidates for diabetes. They're drinking, we call it Kool-Aid, but it's basically diabetic water with food coloring. You know, we need you in our congregations. We need you amongst us so you can begin to turn their attention. And even in some of the things that you do, like on Instagram, Facebook, you know, 1 minute, I don't know, Charles Drew Nuggets, something like that. If you do it, let me know. Branding is what I do. Charles Drew Nuggets, that informs the community through social network on health tips and how they can live healthy. How many times should you see your doctor? If you haven't been to the doctor in so many years, what are you lining yourself up for? Because these people, they're going to suffer if they don't get the knowledge. And right now, our generation, we just don't search it, right? We're not searching for the knowledge. We just wait for it to come and hit us over the head. So I just wanted to throw that in there as well, because that's what we call them OGs, no offense. That's what the OGs, that's what they did. They built a community based on the children and the grandchildren that was going to come after them. So that's now your responsibility.
Thank you, everybody. Great question, Bree. Set off a great discussion. Does anybody have any other questions they'd like to ask? Sure.
So I just want to know, when someone comes to you with, something that they confide in you, they tell you something that hurts your heart, how do you guys deal with it emotionally?
So again, I'm a pastor, so I get everything, right? Emotionally, I feel for them, but then before I get down into the dumps with them, and start singing their sad song, I remember my assignment. I was chosen to help this person come out of this. And then I just lean on, he calls it, he says the Spirit, I lean on God to give me the wisdom. Because what people are going through, like they've all stated, it's hand in hand with their health issues a lot of times. And so if you can get to the root of the problem, and that's just gonna take, some spiritual guy. I know you're smart medically, but it's gonna take some spiritual insight to be able to say, your blood pressure is up, and it's not because your medicine is off. You've got a lot of anxiety. You got some stress going on. And you know what? Maybe you need to take a day and go to Disneyland and hug Mickey Mouse, and take your medicine. You're gonna need that spiritual insight to help bring them out of it. But again, like I told her, that emotional part is gonna be there so you can feel for them. For me, I feel for them, but I don't allow myself to get sad with them, because I remember my assignment to them, if that makes sense.
We have time for one more question. Go ahead.
All right, so I had a quick question about the kids of the community. I wanted to know, what is your best approach to getting through them? Because I know our brothers and sisters, and I've worked with kids before. I've worked with kids before, and it's sometimes really hard to get through to them. So based off your experiences, what is your best approach for the kids that you're familiar with in your community to try and help them, listen more and want to try these things that we might try to help them with? Well, we want to help them with.
Right, so the cool thing about my church is that out of the 4,000 members, 70% of them are 35 and under. So it's a huge young crowd, right? But a lot of people think that I draw them with candy and, and free trips to Magic Mountain. That's not true. How you can relate to the young people is by not insulting them. And what does that mean? You don't have to know the dances, Charles Drew, even though you rock. And you have to come to my church and perform on the main stage. Thank you. All right. But you don't have to come and think you have to know all the jargon, right? That's not what they need from you. They want mentors. They want people that care. And if you show them that you genuinely care about them, they will freely open up. But then you got to be in it for the long haul. Because once these kids open up to you, they are attached to you for life. And again, I invite you guys to come down one Sunday and hang out with the kids that are there. We just did something, and you guys came, and you came on a Sunday, and it was crazy out there. They show them how to cook and everything, and now I have several kids who want to come to Charles Drew University just because they learned how to do like skinless chicken, you know, so, you know, so it's simple things like that, you know, just be genuine, share your heart, you know, be real with them, and they'll open up. Just don't try to come in and think you gotta know Drake and do the Kiki challenge, you know, because they want a difference from their friends, you know, and I did it too. And I just stayed in my car. They want to know the difference between their friends and someone that they can look up to. So if you're genuine with them, they'll give you the world. They come off one way, and that's stereotypes and television. But these kids, they'll open up to you if they just know you're real.
Okay, should we do one last question? Oh. Okay, two. We'll do two.
So hi everybody, my name is David, grew up in LA, born and raised, went to Audubon Middle School, then Crenshaw High School. So I was just wondering, so I grew up in LA and I feel like the demographics are changing a little bit. We have a larger Latino population. So how is CDU kind of bridging the communities and kind of bringing them together?
Well, CDU has been devoted to diversity from day one. I'm doing a lot of archival work, and I found one of the very early books on hiring, and we had people from all communities. We had international employees, so we've been a world community from day one. We are, if you look at our annual report, you'll see that we are about equal in Latino and African American students in medicine. I don't know how it is in the PA program, but we are attracting students from the community who are Latino. And we're very happy about that. We're not going to be successful unless the students that we attract look like the communities that we're serving. We're not going to be successful. We understand that. So I think it's just going to continue that way and get better and have more representation on faculty and more projects which are devoted to looking at where we are the same and where we are different. One of the things that I've been working on with the president is in the disparities in health in African American Latino communities. What's the same? What are the things that are the same, and what are the things that are different? Historically, African Americans have had more access to health insurance than the Latino population has had. That's equalizing to some degree because of ACA, but African Americans don't use their insurance to go get care when they have it because of the racism that they encounter often when they go to the doctor, okay? So you have different problems, and you have to sort of understand the challenges in diverse communities in order to be a good provider. So we know that, and we're working on that, and researchers are working on that so that we can have informed policy that deals with the different challenges that our diverse communities have.
Let me say something on that one, because you hit a spot with me on that. There's never been a problem with the black community, as you said, you used the word bridged. It's always been bridged. It's where did that concept come from? Because you must have got it from someplace. You see what I'm saying? We have always been open. As folk have come into the black community, that pilferage the black community to research, to pull the resources out. And when I say the resources, I mean they exploit the community itself. Because when I was coming up, it was black, it was brown, it was Chinese and Japanese go to Fremont. There was never, my first girlfriend was Mexican. I used to sneak through the alley. I'm kicking myself in the ass today for not following up on that one. You understand what I'm saying? So when you say bridge, the illusion of a bridge, we've already been together. Her mother used to cook tacos. My mother used to cook burritos and hamburgers. Because why? We knew because of the white racism that all we had was ourselves, and that's how we made it. See, when we get this illusion that I'm making it. You said something, Pastor, that was really important, because when you know your history, you know you stood on somebody's shoulders that may not look like you. And that's where our community down here is so precious. It's a jewel, because we never did think of anyone as bridge. You were family. You're part of the Drew family now. Now Sylvia is an attorney. She could go in that attorney shit, you know, that policy stuff. My thing is policy. I mean, family. You my family. If my mother would let you in my house, I don't give a damn who you were, because she had to meet your family. Then it all worked. It wasn't about who you were at that point. It was about you were part of this extended family. And that's what you are now. Now we can make it legal, shit, and say policies and all of that, but you've already been accepted. Now think of it that way. And if you think of it that way, you can see your fellow man as your brother or your sister, because it's part of an extension of you, who you are. Because you, therefore, your mission is to help. It's not about bridging and I'm doing better than you and all of that. You know, I mean, there's knuckleheads everywhere you go. It's racism.
But let me say that you are in a unique part.
That's right.
Of Los Angeles, because we have always had integration between
family.
A professor at USC, Dr. Pastor, spoke to us, and he said, we are the example in South LA for the rest of Los Angeles, because the other parts of the county have not had this level of integration of the groups. So we have had, you know, Latinos have had black teachers, black students have had Latino teachers. We've mixed together. We're familiar with each other. Other parts of the county,
that dynamic is
you don't find that.
Yeah.
So take advantage of that in this community as you work through it, and as well as our own community here, because you are experiencing something that isn't available.
That's right.
In many other places.
That's right.
Yeah.
You're absolutely.
And you know, real quick, I wasn't gonna jump in on that conversation because Pop's got it, you know. But
Triple OG.
Yeah, triple OG. You know, no real, you know, like deference, you know. But I would say that question does bring to the top something that is happening in our community. That there seems to be an unnecessary war or tension between the black and brown, where you have sometimes the Latinos, the Hispanics, the black, the Spanish, that feel like they have to say, hey, you know, we're here too. You know, what are you all doing for us as well? As to allude to, that is always focusing on the black people. And we're here also. And I just want to say, I mean, this was a thought-provoking question, so it's good. So this is not charged at you. This is put in the atmosphere. Don't fall into the system. And this whole thing where they want us to fight each other over crumbs, when we all need to come together and take over the table. You know, and the reason why that needs to be said is because sometimes you can go into certain offices and you can feel it. You know, as a black man, I'll come in sometimes and some Latinos won't help me, but they'll help the other Latinos that's in the waiting room first. or they have a different kind of attitude with them. And then there's black people who make it a point to be like, oh, you know, I got you. I'm like, look, I just want to be in order. I'm just, I don't need you to, you know, like all this is not necessary. If she was first, check on her.
Right.
That's what's right, you know? But that comes from this whole mindset of, we're coming up with this like, y'all need to fight to see, you know, are they treating you fair? We are all in the same hood. We all dealing with the same struggles, and we all gonna have to use one another to come on up out of this. So I just wanna just throw that out there, because it is there, you know, we're not gonna pretend like it's not. But guess what? You're called and assigned to this community to help change all of that as well. And I have Latinos and blacks in my congregation, and I'm so happy to have them there. And I'm gonna open up a Spanish location across the street.
Okay, did you have totally one more question? Last question of the day.
So I've listened to you talk about the complexity of the issues in the area and the realization that health is related to social, economic, and environmental factors. How do you then prioritize what projects you take on?
How do you prioritize? The project you take on as an individual?
Yes, for the community.
Where do you feel that you fit in at? Because it's not about me telling you where you fit in at. Because sometimes you just have to sit back, go through your studies, and life has a tendency to bump you in a direction. Now the question becomes, are you obedient? Are you gonna follow the money trail? Because you'll never find it finding the money trail. Because you're gonna have to endure, the pastor hit it on the head. This community is gonna test you to see where you fit in at. And it's gonna test you, and it's gonna test you, and it's gonna test you. But as long as you're obedient and you're there for the purpose of serving the people, you'll find out. One day you'll wake up and you'll find out where you need to be. Right now, you're trying to get your studies together. Look at me, from drafting to computer science to damn economics, then back to behavior science. But God had a plan for me. He didn't do it overnight. Everything I learned it because it helped establish my office, which helps folk in a diverse way find themselves. Because the bottom line was, I learned how to take care of people. And that was the most reward of all things, is knowing, because I knew something was more devastating than this. Why do we drink alcohol? Why do we do this? Why do we destroy ourselves when we got all these other problems going on? People don't drink and use when they feel good about themselves. So once I answered that question, which is something that none of us like to talk about, is trauma. I retired from the VA and I've dealt with my brothers that from Vietnam. Now you want to talk about some messy, nasty stuff, but that was my calling, was dealing with the complexities of war and man not liking each other, and they used every brutal attempt to kill one another or maim one another. Well, that's not one of your favorite professions to go into, but I did, because it made me understand why black on black crime, why black on brown crime, why brown on brown crime, why all this phenomena was taking place. Well, guess what? Oh, I found my purpose. Because I stayed open in my studies. What is it about wisdom? How do you get wisdom? Through knowledge. But you got to keep living it. How do you prioritize? Just keep waking up in the morning. That damn simple. So you're complex in your life because you're asking questions when you just started on the journey. Just keep waking up in the morning. Then all of a sudden you'll see where you fit.
I wanted to respond. When I got my master's degree from UCLA, you know, I had a background in sociology and biology. And so I was in the behavioral science health education division. So I was trained as a generalist, thinking that I was going to come out of graduate school and be a health educator that would go work for the county health department. But that didn't happen because the county at the time was laying off all of their health educators and they weren't hiring. So I got a job working with the National Hospice Research Study, which I knew nothing about before I got recruited into public health. So even though I came here developing teen pregnancy prevention programs, I segued into HIV. I had no knowledge of HIV, but I learned and I became an expert over 25, 30 years in HIV. But within the last 5 years, due to other issues that our community is faced with, and with some students of mine writing a proposal to develop a farmer's market, now I'm developing expertise in terms of food security and the food revolution that's going on. And so you just sort of like go with the flow, and if people come to you with issues that you don't have the expertise in, hopefully you know where to refer them to where someone can help them who does have those expertise. So I don't try to take on anything where I don't have the expertise, but I do know where to send people to where they can get the help that they need.
My answer would be that you're going to do different things in your life. You're going to keep learning on your journey. But you should always ask yourself, where do I get the biggest bang for the buck? And as you learn more, as you see more, as you're taught by your patients more, the answer to that question will come to you. Mm-hmm. And that's what you should address, because you have one life to live. You have one opportunity to really make a difference. All of your learnings will be useful to you, but use them towards something that's going to outlive you.
That's right, a legacy.
Ditto.
Okay, thank you so much, everybody, for coming. I think we're going to take class of 2020, please return at 1 o'clock, and many, many amazing messages from our panel. One thing to remember that I think was the overriding message is make sure your motives are always pure, be real, don't ever compromise your integrity, and stay committed to do what you say you're going to do. And your path will veer and vary, but you will always give whatever it is in that moment. Maybe it's 1 week, a month, a day, a year, 10 years, 100% of your effort, and deliver excellence. And wherever else then you go, you go. So, I think, thank you all so much for your great advice.